中で貫いた偽りのジャスティス握っていたはずの手はいつしかはぐれていた巡る季節刻む時計道をたがえた二人 So tonight 今夜もまた tonight ため息つく一人きりじゃ上がけない思い出 Not tonight 近いの So tonight 場所で待つよこんな夜はお前に会える気がして二人また歩いて行けるなら胸の古傷も頬つたう涙も笑い話に変えてみせるさ
Join me now as we travel to a world of crime and suspicion, of gangsters and despots, of humanity, parenthood, and finding hope in a dark place. I introduce to you Yakuza.
It was 3 years ago. I can still take myself back in time, make myself feel how I did then, give myself the same degrading verbal beatdowns. Like pushing a button. I could feel the bags under my eyes every day, feel how they weighed my head down and turned my neck into a swivel. I remembered the numbness in my hands crawling up to my shoulders, which ached from tension I was carrying around. I can never forget the sensation of drowning, lying in my bed and feeling my chest get tight and doing my best to breathe. I remember hitting record on my camera, taking a deep breath and crawling into my fake ego. I didn't trust anyone. I was scared of everybody. I desperately wanted someone to tell me I was doing something, anything right. And I was sick of wanting it. Sick of being afraid and angry and apathetic all at the same time. It felt like I was chasing a shadow I used to wear, gunning for the approval of people who couldn't care less. And to be honest, I wasn't even sure I'd be satisfied with finally getting it. There's a saying I'm fond of in regards to chasing recognition or achievement. I don't recall where I've heard it. I might have made it up to begin with. It goes, if they don't see you, and if they won't take you seriously, then become someone impossible to ignore. These words toured my mind and found a home inside my spite and paranoia when I wrote the first script for Questrospective, the show you are currently watching, which is now very different from when it began. I've told you the story for many reasons, one we'll get into later, so keep watching. It's difficult to capture the original moments within the stories you tell, folks. The longer it's been and the more you do it, the better you get at telling them, but the less grounded in reality they become as they flourish into legends. The original Yakuza is one such tale. Everything from its production to its developers, right down to the narrative housed within, is the starting point to a long, quiet history which has recently and finally gained deserved recognition. As time marches on, we age, as does our way of thinking and most creations born in the instance thereof, but stories change with us, because our way of telling them also changes. Yakuza Kiwami is one of those stories. As we approach the end of Kazuma Kiryu's tenure, with Ryuga Gotoku 6 being the final entry featuring him as the central protagonist, it's worth looking back to where it all began. It's worth hearing the story told one more time. RGG Studios was happy to oblige, but you must understand, Yakuza Kiwami and the original Yakuza on the PlayStation 2 are not the same story. Ryuga Gotoku has become something entirely different. The creatives who survived the original's production are different. You and I are different. In 10 years, the heavy with a heart of gold, excommunicated by his clan, has been deified into a paragon of hope in the world. The Kazuma Kiryu from 2005 didn't possess the soothing tones of Bakamitai or the sensitivity of a natural father figure. The Kazuma Kiryu of 2005 hadn't found his Gokudo by searching for the truth and standing up against the bastion of idealism he subscribed to 17 years prior. The Kazuma Kiryu of 2005's stoicism and brooding gaze wasn't born from a quiet contemplation of moral navigation or a wisdom beyond his years guiding him towards inner peace. His stoicism and brooding was just that. Tired, resigned, brooding. It's impossible to tell the story of Kazuma Kiryu as it was told in the beginning. We know too much and have grown too much for such a story to satisfy our curiosity. It needs recontextualization for side characters with important history. It needs rehabilitation for a crowd favorite whose sense of humanity didn't exist in 2005. Yakuza Kiwami isn't about the legend of the Dragon of Dojima. Yakuza Kiwami is the legend of the Dragon of Dojima. Revised and edited, polished and expanded, smoothed, shined, and casting a reflection so clear I can see myself in it.
Kiryu has lost his family, and with it, the world as he knew it. When your surroundings are no longer familiar to you, it's time to get reacquainted.
I was writing a lot of poetry 3 years ago. Much like a teenage theater major, I tend to only write poetry when I'm trying to impress myself, or deeply, deeply miserable. It was by total coincidence that I found my old collection of poems over the weekend when I played Kiwami. I had written more than I had remembered. Poems about losing people I cared about. Poems of wanting to make them proud before they passed. Poems about meeting new people and the fear of hurting them. Some poems were hilariously bad and I gently turned the page. Other poems lacked heart and were more akin to tantrums and insults. I tore those up and threw them away. And even still, many of them still hummed chords my heart could beat along to. Chords which inspire me even now while I'm writing this script to write new verses and tell myself from back then we'd be having a better time of it. Moving through the original iteration of Kamurocho and bumping into old sub-stories in the same familiar place was a lot like reading my old poetry. There's the matchstick girl with her basket of matches and her wishful thinking. The young upstart asking me to take him under my wing. The little boy waiting patiently for his mother at the park. Hungry and alone. I remember putting so much stock into these sub-stories, as though their blatant messaging were secret meanings to piece together like a puzzle. Revisiting these streets put into context how much I craved something meaningful from what I was doing at the time, but they also reminded me Ryuga Gotoku was doing its best to respond in kind and was still trying to now. Yakuza Kiwami adds new sub-stories and minigames with continuity carried over from Yakuza 0. Pocket Circuit Racing is back, as are the characters from its related sub-stories. The children you used to race against are now adults who've grown out of the hobby. Over the course of a couple of sub-stories, you reawaken their interest in Pocket Circuit Racing. Not a huge, burning reinvestment, but enough to spark the joy they used to have when they were younger, and remind them of the bonds they formed playing it. The new sub-stories of Yakuza Kiwami and the fresh coat of paint on the old is a renewed kindling for the thoughts I formed after playing the original, but it's short-lived. Unlike with me and my poetry, Ryuga Gotoku kept sub-stories we were better off throwing into the flames and leaving behind in days long past, when we were different people. It's also difficult to appreciate the slow burn of the original Yakuza sub-stories because Kiwami's efforts to sensationalize itself leaves little time for metaphorical campfires.
Forget whatever you were doing at the destination. Half of the satisfaction from playing Yakuza was getting somewhere without having to ask for directions. Those were proud moments and a great facilitator for identifying with Kiryu. As the game progresses, he starts recognizing his home again in the same way you do.
I don't exactly remember when the shift happened, when I was able to pull myself out of the self-defeating routine. I'm not sure I can take sole credit for it. My closest friends in both proximity and relation lived a solid hour or more away, and I hadn't seen them in at least a year, so driving up to hang out provided both an opportunity to talk to myself in the car about how I was feeling and an escape from the never-ending barrage of false scenarios my anxiety would create when I was sitting at my desk. My route took me through familiar stomping grounds and new places I'd quickly consider a second home. When I think about those places, I also think about those friends. Never exactly opened up to them about any of it. I find showing my feelings difficult. Being sad, being angry, being upset, my childhood environment taught me I wasn't allowed to be any of those things. So naturally, expressing those emotions or talking about the things making me feel those ways has always felt wrong, unjustified, maybe fake. But it didn't stop my friends from asking, and me from letting them in just a little. They'd drag me out of bed every weekend, we'd go bowling or to a driving range, and share stories about what we've been getting up to. Around this time, someone else, who was very kind, kept me company on rides home, sending me messages here and there, slowly becoming a permanent resident on the island I had become. I think, if it weren't for my friends and this person, I'd be a very bitter man. The constant check-ins and assurance from my friends wasn't something the original Yakuza ever conveyed to me, but reminiscing while playing Kiwami and encountering the notorious Majima Everywhere system certainly did. In an attempt to help Kiryu get back on his feet and in shape, the co-star of Yakuza 0 replaces Mr. Shakedown as the constant force seeking to challenge players around Kamurocho. Majima really is everywhere. In the garbage cans, in the street cones, in the parked cars. He'll invade the battles you get into with thugs on the street. He'll chase you down from an entire block away if he sees you. He'll hide behind corners like a child playing hide and seek. Majima will dress up as a hostess to put you through an embarrassing situation. Majima will stage a zombie apocalypse to scare you senseless. Majima will go bowling with you. Majima will play pool with you. Majima will show up to play pocket circuit racing with you. Majima will be your friend when you need one the most. He'll take breaks from bothering you to give you time to yourself. He'll invite you somewhere and insist on you showing up. And every time, you're stronger for it. I was dreading Kiwami on account of being told concerning issues with both Majima Everywhere and changes made to the fighting system, but found both to be engaging. Your encounters with Majima, whether they include fighting him or not, unlock the skill slots in the dragon ability sphere. By the end of Kiwami, Kiryu's dragon style is more powerful than the other three at his disposal, representing a return to form and new strength. The Majima Everywhere system helps explain and establish the friendship he and Kiryu have and is an exciting imbalance added to the exploration of Kamurocho. For veteran players, the Majima Everywhere system gives us new surprises and refreshing challenges and shuffles our existing understanding of the city. This is lost on first-time visitors. It does slightly overstay its welcome. You'll max out all of your abilities and complete the Majima Everywhere side quests just around the time you want to wrap up sub-stories you missed before heading to the finale. At this point, Majima becomes more of a nuisance than a welcome challenge. He gets in the way of the finish line without much of a silver lining, since none of the experience you gain from fighting him can be spent. By then, Majima's ever-increasing health bar is a bit unmanageable for an enemy you're expected to fight every other encounter. It's this scenario, as well as Kiwami's boss fights, where knowledge of your abilities is essential. Kiwami's boss fights are known to be long slogs where enemies begin to heal unless interrupted by heat moves. Special climax heat moves deal extra damage when a boss goes into the healing state, and Kiwami does an admittedly terrible job conveying this central mechanic to the player. It hands you control of a post-Yakuza 0 Kiryu with all moves unlocked. Then, after escorting you through a series of tutorials punctuated by the usage of climax heat moves, completely depowers Kiryu and locks those heat moves behind a skill tree, without informing the player. The sudden shift to a severely limited moveset, on top of gatekeeping, an essential ability the game has built its bosses around, and Kiwami's return to the original Yakuza's technical fighting, creates such a dramatic confusion many players instantly lose their momentum, especially if it's their first Yakuza. I saw this happen firsthand, shortly after uploading the Yakuza 1 video. I was spending time with those friends of mine when I recommended one of them pick up Kiwami as a start into the series. I watched him play it for about 2 hours. At first, we laughed at the absurdity of Kiwami having added a segment explaining how Kiryu bought Yumi's ring, and I smiled when almost instantly he was engaged. I saw him enjoy the various tutorial fights, including the prisoner boss fight which explained the climax heat moves to us. And then I watched him fumble with switching between styles, a mechanic still foreign to me at the time and poorly explained by Kiwami, which assumes the player has spent time with Zero. The room got very quiet, as my friends and I scratched our heads at the sudden 2-button combo limit Kiryu's dragon style had been given, and at how slow and unresponsive he felt. We put the game down after tossing the controller back and forth, trying to solve the puzzle before us. We barely got past the Abe fight at the start of the game. That same copy of Yakuza Kiwami now sits on the shelf of another friend who was with us that day. The initial owner, so deeply deflated from his experience with Kiwami's first 2 hours, he was determined to remove it from his personal library. Yakuza Kiwami had become the embarrassing friend throwing up into the pool who I knew shouldn't have been brought to the party. That being said, I know he's watching this right now because he sends me very kind letters like this one about how well I'm doing. I'm way better at video games than he is. He's probably laughing right now.
It's less about feeling like a powerhouse and more about feeling like a martial arts master. You're not invincible or unstoppable, but you can prove to be so adaptable that you might as well be.
Kiwami's poor conveyance and jarring start is poisonous to first-time players, and to a certain extent, even those coming from Zero, expecting the fast and loose gameplay style it encourages to translate well into what is essentially a direct sequel. The boss fights of Kiwami, by comparison, feel slow and plodding with very little room for combos and over-the-top damage. Kiwami's fights are lifted straight from the original Yakuza, from a time where heat moves were low in number and stages lacked the props necessary to spam every heat move at your disposal. For fans newer to the series, this is painful to play. For fans who've been around since the beginning, this is still painful to play. It's been a long time since Yakuza asked for careful, deliberate technique in its fights. Since 2005, the series has invested more and more into the heat move concept and indulged the flashy, over-the-top brutality it provides. But if you can get past relearning old-school Yakuza design, fights in Kiwami are a power trip. A better timed dodge will place you directly behind an enemy, opening them up to a longer combo before they can regain their guard. Skills you unlock allow for instant style changing after finishing a combo or evading an attack, essentially extending your rush combos into other styles. Raising your heat meter in a certain style can allow you to activate temporary buffs, such as increasing the speed of your attacks, granting you super armor, and preventing your heat from dropping. And bosses healing, while an annoyance without the easily executable climaxes, can still be interrupted by activating other heat moves, such as ones enabled by weapons you can equip or with proper spacing. Kiwami's fights are centered around utilizing these techniques, and discourages button mashing in favor of giving players a sense of real improvement, like Yakuza 1 did. Its endgame heavily encourages the learning of and application of Kiryu's various counters and parry abilities, as well as keeping weapons on hand for situations requiring a dramatic solution. The Tiger Drop in Yakuza Kiwami has such a generous window for timing, it became my go-to attack for the rest of my playtime, and it never gets old. The Tiger Drop feels good the first time you land it, and it feels even better the 1000th time you land it. Listen to the sound of landing a Tiger Drop. Oh, it's like sweet, sweet music. It's candy, it's a kiss on the lips. It's passionate lovemaking, it's breathtaking. I'm diamonds right now.
Getting to know the city, getting to know the people, and getting to know Kiryu through it firmly planted your feet in the game's setting. The suspension of disbelief was all powerful in Yakuza. and it needs to be, because the story being told in Yakuza doesn't just jump the shark, it puts the shark in space and then flies a rocket over them.
As Kiwami points out, the term Kiwami itself is commonly used to assign something the quality of extreme. Hence, Yakuza Kiwami is meant to be considered Yakuza Extreme. Yet, by comparison to the extremes of its successors, Yakuza 1's plot is incredibly pedestrian. This isn't to shame the PS2 Yakuza, it's a great time, and my recommended entry point to the Kazuma Kiryu storyline. Kiwami, however, doesn't do much of anything to update it. Kiwami's cutscenes are using the exact same motion capture from the original, with updated models and textures on top, and the end result is a little creepy. It's uncanny seeing a high-definition model rigged to a PS2 mouth flap, or awkwardly waddle side to side as it slides off screen, or in this case vibrate its entire body, save for its static arms holding a newspaper. And the original narrative is so low to the ground it's nearly glued to it. So Majima crashes a truck into a building, so what? One game from now he's going to be disarming a bomb by playing Eeny Meeny Miny Mo. So there's a ton of double crossing going on, whatever. Where's the rubber bullets? Where's my fist fight with a bear? My nostalgia had met my jadedness, and the two had agreed to a fight at the top of Millennium Tower. And sitting there, looking at Kazuma Kiryu, remembering the feelings I attached to the original Yakuza, and the arrogance I partly built this video series off of, it dawned on me. 3 years ago, I was nothing like Kazuma Kiryu, but I was a lot like Akira Nishikiyama. To breathe life into the narrative, cutscenes featuring Nishiki, Kiryu's brother and Yakuza 1's main villain, were added to Yakuza Kiwami. The Nishiki cutscenes in Kiwami change our perception of Kazuma Kiryu and provide a retrospective take on the original Yakuza 1 itself. Nishiki is broken down piece by tragedy, disrespect, and a constant comparison to his brother he can't seem to break free from. Where the original Yakuza would have us believe Nishiki lost his way without Kiryu around to help him, Kiwami shows us a Nishiki who fought for his own identity and had it slapped out of his hands at every turn. The 2005 Yakuza would tell us an arrogant Nishikiyama spat in the face of his brother's sacrifice. Kiwami tells us how powerless he was to take advantage of it, and how little it mattered to the ones around him whether or not he did. In Kiwami, we watch a guilt-ridden man do everything he can to make good on the sacrifices made for him, and helplessly spiral into despair as he suffers through loss, deception, and deeply embedded feelings of inadequacy. Being told how great Kazuma Kiryu is, being told he could never compare. Akira Nishikiyama never hated his brother, but in the time Kiryu was away, the world made sure he would, and as observers, we watch their interactions with sadness. We've seen how the story ends. We know the platitudes Kiryu and Yumi will toss out to appeal to Nishiki, and it feels wrong. Nishiki's frustration was juvenile in the original Yakuza. In Kiwami, it feels justified. In Kiwami, I almost want Nishiki to win, so he can finally emerge from Kiryu's shadow, even if for a brief moment. I look at him and the person I was 3 years ago with pity. I see two people chasing after validation in places they'll never find it. I can see myself about ready to do anything for even a brief moment of success. My take on playing video games has always been in respect to self-analysis. Playing Yakuza Kiwami after having gone through the series in order of release is being taken back to the time and place I played Yakuza 1. And like with Yakuza 1, my disposition and outlook from back then is embedded into Yakuza Kiwami as well. Only now it's like I'm watching the memory on a screen, staring at the person I was, and wondering if I ever got any better at managing those feelings. I know I still feel inadequate, but do I still carry the malice around? Have I done something meaningful? Have I put good in the world, or do I still need to prove myself? Have I become the dragon I set out to be, or am I still the koi fighting the stream? How has my story changed? How have I changed? These questions prevent me from recommending Yakuza Kiwami as an entry point into the series. It expects you to have played Yakuza 0 first and does a poor job onboarding new arrivals to the series. It's not even a very good representation of what the series overall resembles and has many new inclusions for the sake of maintaining continuity. But most importantly, Kiwami is self-reflective of Yakuza's origins. Its new content criticizes the original vision and presents it without much alteration in order for this hindsight to hit home. I think a lot of what Kiwami does would go underappreciated without the context of having played the original, or at least without having played Yakuza 0. Kiwami provides me with a lens into my past and fills me with a vague melancholy and a sense of peace. It's given me a moment of introspection, and it wouldn't have if I hadn't played the original Yakuza 3 years ago for an internet video I made fueled by my own indignation. And it gives me solace now, being able to look back to who I was and feel like a different person. Covering the series has helped me grow out of the spite I was consumed by, and now both Ryuka Gotoku and this video series represent something positive, something productive, something healthy. I'm glad I stuck to it.